Today I'll be creating plants in Blender and Substance Painter, but I'm not making them the normal way like you've already seen a couple of times on this channel, but I'll create them out of junk. These will be assets for a short film I'm currently working on, which will hopefully release pretty soon on this channel. But now let's get right into the creation of the plants. The first one is a simple flower, and the most obvious object I could think of was a valve as the flower head. For that I created a hexagonal plane, gave it some thickness and beveled it, and then used the boolean tool to cut out the holes. The stem of the flower is simply a thin metal pipe. Now let's unwrap this thing and import it into Substance Painter for texturing. I'm going for a kind of stylized cartoon art style in this short film, so of course the plants will be in this style too. The texturing process basically involves creating a base color, adding a few grunge maps and generators like curvature and dirt to highlight the edges and make the ridges dark. An important step for the art style is to add a blur slope filter to every layer, and at this point I have to give credit to Stylistation because that's where I learned this technique. And with that our flower is done and we can get to the second plant. That one I wanted to be out of lamps, so I first created a bundle of metal rods and at the top I put some lampshades. Also, to make these plants look more believable, I added a light switch on every one of them. Then, just like for the flower, I unwrapped and imported it into Substance Painter, where I gave it a rusty metal material the same way I made it for the flower. And that's about it for the second plant. The third plant is just a bundle of nails and I thought it kind of looked like grass, so yeah. And I also made a very simple fern type of plant out of deformed planes and again a rusty metal material. But now let's get to the trees, and I'll start with the smallest one. I wanted to create a bonsai tree, and so I modeled the shape of the trunk out of a low poly cylinder and extruded the branches out of it. Then I had to think of round objects that could go onto the branches, and I landed on a bowling ball, a round pot, another lampshade and some other metal thing. In Substance Painter I did the same procedure as for the other objects, but because I thought the trunk was looking a bit boring, I added some height maps which looked like metal and added a bit of detail. That's it for the bonsai, and now let's get to the big trees. But before I created those, I first made some metal chunk plates and gave them a variation of textures. Then for the trunk of the trees I created a lamp post, and for the pine tree I simply placed the metal planes around the tree. Also, to make it look a bit more interesting, I gave the tree a bit of a curve and rotated the planes so they looked a bit more random. For the other tree I used the same lamppost as for the pine tree and added a sphere at the top and placed the chunk around that sphere. And to keep all the chunk in place, I thought it looked pretty cool to make a metal grid around it. I also used the same grid technique with the wireframe modifier to create a branch. And that's how I created plants out of junk. Thanks for watching this video to the end, and I wish you a great day.